Welcome back to the GSMC College Football Podcast, presented to you by the GSMC Network. Just talked a little bit about some of the spring games coming up from this upcoming weekend, got into some of the previews there. Next, I want to talk a little bit about Washington, but first, before we do that, I just want to remind everyone that we love hearing from you during the show, whether it's a quick comment, thoughtful question, just an opinion that you have to get out, you have to share. We want to hear it. An easy way to do that is you can use the super chat feature. So to do that, just click the $ at the bottom of the chat box to send in your super chat. This guarantees that your message gets on the air, gets viewed, and it's also just a great way to support our channel. We rely on your support to help us keep the lights on, keep bringing you the sports content that you love, that we love. We're so grateful for your support, and we love having you as a part of our community here at GSMC. So we're going to talk a little bit about the West Coast Big Ten teams now, at least two of them. So I want to talk a little bit about Washington first right now. Washington did not have a great 2024 season, kind of struggled adjusting to the Big Ten, really had a lot of departures after Kalen DeBoer left, after that national championship run in 2023, lost Michael Penix, lost their receivers, Ramadunze, Jalen McMillan. There's a couple guys. There was a lot of talent, and then once DeBoer left as well, there was kind of mass exodus of transfers. So last year was kind of a rebuilding year, retooling, tough year for Washington. Head coach Jedd Fisch was brought in from Arizona. I actually really like Jedd Fisch. I think he's a solid coach. But this was a tough year for Washington. Not a super strong roster. Kind of got depleted, like I said, after that season. But so, quarterback-wise, they brought in Will Rogers last year from Mississippi State. He was a 4-year starter at Mississippi State. Super productive there. He kind of was what you'd expect. You know, he completed 70% of his passes. That was he's always been a really high completion percentage guy. But as the season went on, kind of threw more interceptions, struggled against teams like Iowa, Indiana, especially as the line kind of started to break down. Didn't have as much time. The weapons around him weren't as strong. So Will Rogers, he kind of really had a tough year at the end, but he's going to be gone. He's out of eligibility. In steps Damon Williams full-time. Now, Damon Williams, this is an exciting quarterback. He kind of took over at the end of the season last year, played a few games for Washington, and really showed kind of his flashes of what he can do. This is a kid with elite athletic ability, true dual-threat quarterback. Every time he scrambles is kind of a worry for opposing defenses. He's really electric, exciting quarterback, but still has to grow, especially as a passer. Will be a true sophomore, so still young, still learning. Didn't play too much last year, got enough experience, but this is obviously still going to be a young quarterback that's going to make mistakes. But I think when everything is clicking for Damon Williams, he's going to be a really fun quarterback to watch, and this could be a fun Washington offense to watch, even though talent-wise they may not be top tier, at least in the Big Ten right now. They also brought in Kai Horton from Tulane. That's probably going to be the main backup to Damon Williams. Pretty experienced quarterback there, but he's kind of still in the competition in name, I guess. But this is going to be Damon Williams' offense at Washington. This is his show. So then Jonah Coleman, it looks like, is going to be the main running back. Had a really strong 2024 season. Had 1,050 rushing yards, averaged like 5.5 yards per carry. Had 10 touchdowns. Also had 23 catches, 177 receiving yards. So this is going to be a kid that had a strong year last year. They didn't really bring in anyone to supplant his spot, so Jonah Coleman will be the main guy here. And then Adam Muhammad is pretty much solidified as his backup. He had 42 carries last year, only less than 200 yards, but in those carries kind of solidified himself as the second guy in Washington. Pro Football Focus is really high on Jonah Coleman in particular. They had him ranked as their number 4 returning running back. I don't know if he's that high, but that's still a really good sign of an indicator of his talent level of what he can do for the Husky offense. I think Jonah Coleman is going to be a guy that Washington's going to rely on. I guess Washington's play-by-play commentator, he was calling Damon Williams, Jonah Coleman, and Adam Muhammad Run DMC. I thought that was pretty funny. I like that throwback there. Pass catching wise, though, for wide receivers, they are going to lose their number 1 wideout. But Denzel Boston, he's going to be back. He had a really strong year as their wideout 2 last season. 63 catches, 830 yards, 9 touchdowns. He was kind of their number 2 receiver behind Giles Jackson all year. Should step up kind of into that main role as that X wide receiver. There's a couple other names here that are going to be in contention. Omari Evans, he's kind of the biggest addition right now. Had a decent year at Penn State. I wouldn't put too much stock in Penn State receivers right now, personally, but that's kind of my opinion. Penn State, though, or Omari Evans, though, 400 receiving yards last season, 5 touchdowns, so still had a decent chunk of production for Penn State. Could be a guy that potentially makes a jump up at Washington with a little more opportunities in the pass game there. Tight end wise, Keleki Latu, he's probably going to be the main guy. Kind of solidified himself last season, had 40 catches, almost 400 receiving yards. Really showcased that he's a reliable option there. But this is going to be a unit that's unproven for the most part, and there's going to be guys that are going to have to step up here if Washington wants to have a really solid chance at having a successful season. I think wide receiver tight end is going to be a spot where they're going to need to have guys step up and probably outperform expectations a little bit there, I think. Offensive line, last season, they really faced challenges, had a lot of injuries, didn't have a lot of depth, so they were pretty inconsistent throughout the year. Had some games where they looked like really strong, like world beaters, especially considering their 2023 roster. That offensive line was stacked, probably was a top 3 offensive line in the country that season. So the inconsistency really showed in 2024 after injuries, after the departures of some of those guys from that other roster. But there's a lot of new opportunities now. There's a couple guys that have left, 4 or 5 of their offensive linemen left, but they also have guys that are emerging, such as Landon Hatchett, Maximus McCree, Carver Willis. They're all kind of guys that could be potential starters. They're fresh faces, bring a little bit of new energy, new swag, different kind of skill sets to the line. Also, they changed offensive line coaches, brought in Michael Switzer, and that should potentially help these guys' development, improve the play overall, the quality of the offensive line play. They do return 3 starters, 2-ish starters. Swane Fasolo, he's going to be their left tackle. He's returning. Drew Azapardi, he's returning as well at right tackle. I already said Maximus McCree, but he's also a returner. Could be a potential guy to start there. But at least 2 returning starters. This is going to be a spot, though, where it's going to be up in the air, kind of, and that is a line, a room where Washington really needs some improvement there. D-line, it's also kind of it was last year, especially, was a transitional year. Had some holdovers from the Kalen DeBoer era. Also brought in a couple transfer guys, but they didn't really have a lot of top-end talent. Were competitive at times, but didn't really consistently challenge offensive lines, didn't really consistently rush the passer. Had 20 sacks, though, over 12 games, so a little bit over a sack and a half a game. Also had 43 tackles for loss just in total as a team. not a whole lot, but a decent number. Javen Parker is going to be one guy to look at for this upcoming season. He only played 4 games last year, had 10 total tackles, but he did tear his Achilles against Rutgers, so that's going to be the big thing to look for here is just how he will rehab from that injury, how he will come back. Will he be 100% after that tear? Achilles is a really rough injury to kind of go through. Another guy, though, is Alinius Davis. He played all 11 games last year. Didn't have super strong numbers. Only had 2 tackles for loss. Only had a sack. But the fact that he appeared in all 11 games as a true freshman, that really kind of showcased his potential. This could be a guy that's going to leap into a bigger role this season, just with more opportunities, more available playing time at Washington. This is going to be a challenging unit, though. There's not a ton of depth. There's not a ton of experience on the line right now. That's really going to be a unit that's going to rely on underclassmen like Davis to kind of elevate that room, step into that role, and just develop a little more. Development's really going to be crucial here. Will these young guys be able to step up? And this could also be a spot where there could potentially be some kind of transfer portal addition on the D-line just to kind of bolster that room a little bit. Schedule-wise, they've got some tough games. Washington has to play Ohio State. That game is at home, though. However, they do have to go to Michigan. I think, depending on how Michigan's season's going, that could be a tough game. Have Illinois at home. Illinois is a team I'm pretty high on this season. They have to play at Wisconsin. I don't think Wisconsin's going to be the strongest program this year, but playing at Madison is going to be a tough place for them to go and have to play at. And then they have Oregon, but Oregon is at home. I believe that's the last weekend of the season. That's rivalry week. But just right there, those are 5 games that are very easily losses for Washington, and that's not counting any of their other matchups against some of the other Big Ten teams that are kind of in that middle of the pack where it seems like most of those games are kind of a toss-up on a week-to-week basis. So this is going to be a Washington team I think is probably going to hover around 500 again. Could be a little bit over. I think a 75, 8-4 kind of year is possible, but it's going to be a tough season for the Huskies, I think, in the Big Ten. So we're going to take our second break of the show, and when we come back, we're going to stick on the West Coast, and we're going to preview a little bit of the Oregon Ducks and their upcoming season. So stick with us, and we'll be back shortly on the GSMC College Football Podcast.